A very good morning to you. Happy Friday. I know most of you are like TGIF, right? So it's so good to see you this morning. I hope that you've had a better start to the day. Welcome to the show. It's a bit chilly right here in Nairobi, so I hope that you are keeping warm wherever it is that you are watching us from. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and today it's a very important day for all the African children because it is the day of the African child, which again is usually marked every 16th day of June. And of course, the theme for this year is the rights of the child in the digital environment. And of course, like we all know that internet access and usage has been increasing globally. And as of May 2022, there were about 590 million users, and that is 43% of internet penetration in Africa, and this is according to UNICEF. So these figures include children who represent a third of all internet users in the world and are increasingly exposed to the virtual environment. And in as much as the digital era has fundamentally changed the way in which children exercise and realize their rights, many still do not know how to navigate this space. So the big question is, how do we protect those children who are born into a very connected world without infringing on their rights? That is what we want to understand on today's conversation. So you want to stick around until the end of the show. And of course, like we're saying, today is the day of the African child. I mean, if you want to celebrate a child, right, or children, and of course, this is African children in this sense, then feel free to also engage with us on our socials. That is at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter. Or better yet, give us a call. You want to celebrate your child, your niece, your nephew, or any other child, as long as they are African children, feel free to do so as well. Our lines are officially open. And of course, to help us understand how important this day is, we are joined by Dennis Mutiso, who's the Deputy Director, Girl Child Network. So good to have you this morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for sparing your time, despite the fact that it's very cold
sure.
out here to be with us. And of course, first of all, Deputy Director, Girl Child Network. You know, when someone hears the name Girl Child Network, they would expect, you know, an all-female-led. But it's important to have you here, you know, just to really emphasize how important it is, first of all, to not only focus on the girl child, but also, you know, all children in general. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. But can we just, first of all, understand this day and the significance of the day? But then let's just go all the way back to the origin of this day, because way back to what, 1976?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So let's just understand or start from there.
Thank you, Winnie, for having me in the studio today. Yeah, I think before we talk about the Day of the African Child, it's important to come back to the history, so that we understand the origin and what transpired that day. And
what led to the day.
Yes, we can trace the origin of the Day of the African Child to what came to be known as the Soweto protest, that took place in 16th of June, 1976. And the reason why that protest took place, it was because of the kind of education that the black children by then were afforded. You all remember that the apartheid regime and this concept of segregation, where we had access, I mean education for the black children, education for Asian children, and education for the whites. And so during that period, or that June, that protest, over 10,000 black children took to the street to protest, actually in a column. They marched for more than a mile, protesting the kind of poor education that they were getting. And again, they were also protesting and demanding that they be taught in their local native language, and language that can identify with and they can relate with. So during that protest, over 100 children were killed, and actually that number could be higher. That's because the number that we know, it is the number that could be accounted. Again, over 1,000 children were also injured during that protest. And so, in the year 1991, the Organization of African Union, currently called the African Union, initiated this day so that we commemorate as a remembrance of the efforts and also the courage of those children.
And the sacrifice.
Yes, but now this initiative or campaign is commemorated on 16th of June every year. And each year is accompanied by a particular theme. For instance, this year themes is the right of the child within the digital space or environment. Yeah, so that's the genesis of the DAC.
Yeah. And of course, it's just unfortunate that young children who are demanding for better, who know their rights, you know, would unfortunately have to lose their lives, you know, just because they were rather exercising their rights at that particular time. So of course, we understand how important it is for us now, years later, to just first of all focus on protecting these children, making sure that they have a right to basic things, like for example, quality education, which again is also enshrined in our constitution. All right, and of course, like we're saying, the rights of the child in the digital environment, and of course, over time, like you're saying, these themes keep changing. And this year, I think it's very, very important theme to really go by, because we see a lot of children are actually born into the digital space. Majority of them, and most parents usually, you know, would joke, and everybody would say, listen, you bear a child today, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 1 year down the line, they know how to operate your gadget better than you can, right? They get information from, you know, the internet and all those things. So, and it's a good thing. But at the same time, we also need to understand, so then how do we protect them? Because again, there's a lot of things that is happening on the internet, some of them not really good. But there's also another debate around access to the internet, because again, the you know, UNICEF data continues to say there's a majority of people who are not able to, a significant number, like going into like over 2 billion people, and majority of them, of course, as children, are not able to access internet or do not have internet at home. While in other, you know, world, there are some people, or children rather, of the same age group, if we can say, are more like digital savvy as compared to other parts. So there's that bit of inequality, which is not really good. So then the big question is then, how do we ensure that there is quality, first of all, before we even talk about rights, talk about quality of access. But at the same time, there's also a conversation, because there's a time we're having a conversation around, do we then allow these young children, first of all, to be on the internet, to access these devices? Some people were saying, no, let's actually try and delay the age at which they have access. So I don't know what you feel. I'm just curious about like your own personal opinion in terms of delay versus deny debate.
Yes, I think we also need first, before we talk about the access and also the issues of quality, affordability, we also talk about the infrastructure that we have to promote and also to promote and protect these rights. Kenya is a signatory to different Geneva Conventions, and also we have domesticated those statutes. For instance, Kenya is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Children, and we've also signed the African Charter on the Rights of the Children. And actually we domesticated that by a way of enacting our own local national laws, that is the Children's Act 2001. Of course, it has been amended several times. When you look at those statutes and our national laws, they have very strong provisions on matters access to information. And one of the key right for our children that the government has the responsibility to promote, protect, and uphold is promoting access to information for our children. But now, that access also has some limitations, because again, also the African Committee of Experts also acknowledges that within the digital space, children can access information, they can associate, they can also express their views and what have you, but that one also need to be guided. The process need to be objective and facilitative. When we talk about access to information, especially for children, that information needs to be age appropriate, not any kind of information. And again, it also needs to take into consideration the evolving capacity of the children.
Of the child, at the same time. And of course, we'll also, I mean, as we continue with the conversation, then we'll want to understand. So in terms of then offering this guidance, I know I mean, a parent would do their part, right? A teacher probably would do their part. The government can do its part, but at the same time, there still are loopholes, you know, that sometimes exposes our children to some of these risks as well, and especially when it comes to the digital space. But before we address that, and of course, like we said, this again dates all the way back to 1976, right? So looking at it today, here and now, can we talk about the significance? Because again, like we said, you know, children lost their lives, over 100 children lost their lives, 1,000 were injured, and of course many others took to the streets to protest, right? So looking at the significance of this day now, years later, after the first protests, you know, happened, what would you say is the significance of this day? People really, really need to understand how important it is.
Thank you. The significance of this event, or of the DAG, is a call to the African states, especially that are signatory to the African Charter, to make sure that we address the numerous challenges that the African child of today faces. When you recall that protest, the children were demanding for quality education. Today, 50 years since independence, Kenya is set to attain quality education. So that's something that we also need to amplify, so that we hold the government to account. Still today, there's a lot of discrimination and exclusion when it comes to access to education. You remember during that time, the children were also protesting because of that nature of exclusion when it comes to matters of education. So still today, we also need to address those scenes of exclusion.
And the big question is, what has been like, why? Because again, times have changed. We have seen developments, and even when it comes to like infrastructure and when it comes to like our policies, curriculum as well, you know, in school, things have changed over time, but still there are a lot of inequalities, and especially when it comes to one of the basic things, and that is like human right, and this is as far as quality education is concerned. So my biggest question is, what has been the biggest challenge when it comes to attaining that level of quality, before we even talk about you know, how then the internet or the digital era has come in to sort of like help make it easier. I mean, we saw this during COVID-19, where a lot of children had to go to, you know, get to learn on the internet. So what has been the biggest challenge to attain the quality that we, you know, and equality that matter?
Winnie, you agree with me that the digital infrastructure is as good as the people that use them. So sometimes there's what we call the concept of cause effect. We can manipulate the digital space and the infrastructure to serve the public good. And again, you can also manipulate the same infrastructure to harm the public. Now, when it comes to the challenge of accessing the digital spaces, especially for our children, you'll recall that of course, Kenya, in terms of mobile penetration and also the internet access, it's far ahead when you compare it to the rest of our neighbors or globally. But now we still have a lot of challenges. And again, it's because of the infrastructure, because we also have some areas of this country that are still lagging behind in terms of development. When you talk about Isiolo, Garissa, Marsabit, Turkana, you find that the infrastructure there is not as developed as in urban towns or in maybe cities that neighbor the big towns. So there's issues of infrastructure, there's also issues of cost and also poverty, because again, internet access is not free. Maybe the current regime that you have talked about installing maybe internet, maybe so that we have about 25,000 or there are about hotspots, so that people can access the facility. But issues of access, issues of cost, and also those pockets of poverty regions that are lagging behind, you find that they are not in a position to access that facility. And again, if as a grown-up, people in those regions, they cannot access internet facility. It means their children will also not be in a position to access the internet facility. Yeah. You remember during the COVID-19, maybe your children and mine continued with the learning. But what happened to those children from those regions? So there's that digital divide when it comes to people who maybe have some means, and also people from those poor regions. Yeah, so that could be the challenge. Yeah. And again, issues of policies and legislative framework. Yeah, so implementation will also find that remains wanting.
Absolutely. Yes. And we usually talk about that like almost every day here on the show. We say, I mean, we have one of the best policies, you know, like any country would have. And we've seen some of our policies being borrowed by other countries. And they implement them. But as the originators of these policies, you know, we're still struggling with the same. And even aside from some of these inequalities that exist, I think one of the biggest issue that we're also experiencing is sort of like the level of awareness, and especially when it comes to rights, first of all, but even just understanding how to navigate this digital space. So is it more of a case of maybe the children are not offered the guidance that they need, or sometimes parents, guardians, teachers will just leave it to the child. It's like, you want a device, here you have it, and then the rest is up to you, right? What has been the biggest challenge? So that, again, like we're saying, we do not want to leave any child behind.
When you remember that, and you'll agree with me that the digital era has also come up with its own advantage and also with its own disadvantages. Okay. As parents, sometimes we've left our children on their own. Today from work, when you go back to your house, what happens? You go, you get seated, then the person seated next to you is not your child, it's your mobile phone. You are online. Maybe my wife is also online, and because we don't want our children to disturb us, we tell them to watch cartoons. So instead of having time with our children and guiding them appropriately, we are also doing our own things online. Yet we are supposed to be taking time to sitting down with our children, guide them appropriately, whether it in terms of accessing those internet facilities, but we leave them on their own. And because of that, we have exposed our children to greater risk and also harm. Kenya as a country, of course, it has signed a lot of conventions and protocols on online child sexual exploitation and abuse, or what has been known to be OSHEA. But implementation remains wanting. But you know, the primary responsibility as a parent is upon you to make sure that my child, if they have to access internet, if they have to access that digital space, what kind of information are they accessing? What kind of materials are they using? Because sometimes if you leave them, children will remain children because they are unique in their own right. But if they are not guided appropriately, then we expose them to risk. But there are several ways in which we can do that, because again, access to information for children is not absolute. It needs to be guided. And the person to do that, we do not expect the teachers to do that. That one should start from home. Because the primary responsibility of taking care of that children rests with the parent. Sometimes we've left a burden to the teachers, everything including discipline. But you know, discipline starts from home. And again, discipline is a process. It's not an event. It's not like a punishment. Because punishment occurs when a mistake has already taken place. But discipline is a process. So we need, as parents, to sit down with our children, to guide them appropriately. We inform them. You have a right to access information, but this is the time when you should access this information, and this is the kind of information that you should access, be it for learning purposes, be it for education purposes, or even entertainment purposes. But we need to guide our children appropriately. But because there is that disintegration of the social fabric and also family ties, left our children on their own.
Absolutely. And this is very common, and I'm pretty sure all the parents who are watching us this morning will be like, you know what, actually almost all of us are culprits of this thing, right? We just get home, and of course the first thing your child wants is the phone. But instead of sitting down and helping them understand, so first of all, how was your day? How was school? Is there anything that you need? The first thing we had is the mobile phone, which is like one of the commonest, you know, medium that a lot of children would actually use, and that is to access the internet. So then with that said, the big question then remains, so then where does that place the African child? You know, and what is their place when it comes to then the digital environment and understanding all these challenges that they are, you know, facing maybe on a day-to-day basis?
The African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Children recognizes the importance of the digital space and digital infrastructure when it comes to promotion of children's rights. And that one is underpinned by the 4 principles that guides our African Charter, which we've also domesticated. Yes. And so we have 4 principles that should guide that process, be it in terms of access to information using the digital space, be it in terms of access to health. So the first principle is the principle of best interest of the child. That principle presupposes that in all what we do concerning the children, the best interest of the child is paramount. When it comes to access to information, whether they are using the internet or what have you, that needs to be guided by that principle. The question that we should be asking ourselves is, when they are assessing that information, is it in their best interest? Remember, as a parent, you have a primary responsibility to guide your child. You are not going to say, as a defense, that children have access to information. That's the reason why I let them to access maybe and outside. That one is against the law. The other principle is the principle of non-discrimination. When we talk about the digital space, the digital infrastructure, the committee also takes into cognizance the fact that we have some regions of the continent that do not have access to the digital space. So it's also a call for the state that are party to the African Charter to make sure that there is no discrimination when it comes to access to information. The other principle is the principle of survival and development. The digital space, very important, because when you talk about development, education comes in. So we can also use that space, we can also use that infrastructure to promote access to quality education through the digital space. Then the last one is survival. As our children access that information, is it promoting their right to survival? Because when you leave them to access information that or sites that are harmful, then you are exposing them to greater risk. So access to information has to be guided by those principles.
I hear you. And especially when it comes to then guiding them in terms of how far they can go in terms of accessing, you know, some of this information. Like I said earlier on, some parents would argue and say, yes, I try as much as possible and guide my child and advise them, you know, to even navigate the digital space and understanding this is safe, you know, for you as a child. This is good for your development. This is good for, you know, information. And but at the same time, the internet in itself, it's like a huge, you know, space that almost everybody is on there. And sometimes you cannot protect your child 100%. Sometimes they would get cyberbullied. Sometimes they will be attacked. Sometimes they will be lured into like, you know, child pornography and all those things. So then when it comes to that area where that is sort of like lacking, so then what happens? Who do you report to? Like, there's so much that's you know, sort of like missing that would expose this child. But the parent would argue and say, but I have given them the guidance that they need. But still, it does not stop these bad people on the internet from, you know, sort of like quote unquote having access to my child.
Thank you. There are measures, several measures that we can take, but of course we'll have to be guided by the legislative framework that is there.
Okay.
Kenya is a signatory to several conventions, and actually we have the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act of 2018. Yeah. That one has a very clear provisions on how our children should be guided when it comes to accessing the internet. Yeah. And then we also have the National Plan of Actions on tackling child sexual exploitation and abuse, what is known as OSHEA, which is very clear. The principles, the values, and what have you, and the processes as parents, also as the national government. Of course, it's a collective responsibility to protect our children from online bullying, online sexual exploitations, and what have you. But as a parent, as I said, the process starts at home. As a parent, you have a primary responsibility, and the law recognizes you as a primary caregiver. Of course, the state will be there, but the government will not come to your house
and say, no,
to surveillance what sites your children are accessing. It's upon the parents to make sure that from the word go, they should not wait until the children go to school so that they can guided appropriately on the usage of internet. That one has to start from home. It should be a collective responsibility. Maybe from outside we can say the government is doing A, B, C, D, but what happens at the household level? Maybe you may not have some measure of control when your children are outside.
I mean, it's true because they also get this information from their peers.
Exactly.
You know, and even this side. Sometimes yes, you might leave it and say, when you are in this house, this is how far you can go. But then when they go outside, they get, it's pretty much open.
Make sure before they go outside, before they are influenced maybe by their peers and friends, there is that proper guidance from home.
Okay, I see that. And of course, that takes me back to the question that I asked you earlier on. And this is, as a parent, and in your opinion, this whole conversation around delay versus deny, right?
Yes.
And of course, like we said, one of the rights, it's the right to information. So you do not want to deny your child that right. But denying them access to devices, laptop, mobile phones, tablets, iPads, you know, all those things. I wonder what your opinion is. Someone was saying, don't delay, because the more you delay, the more they're left behind. But at the same time, don't deny, because again, you deny, you infringe on their rights. So it's like a catch-22.
True, Winnie, but before we talk about that, we also need to differentiate between the right and also a luxury.
Yes.
Because some of the things that we are calling rights may not qualify as rights.
Okay.
Like laptops, like an iPad, that one is more of a luxury good. So we also need to differentiate that.
Okay.
The kind of information that our children should be supported and facilitated to access should put into consideration their best interest and also their evolving capacity. We should also consider their the age appropriateness of that information that we are accessing. So today, if your child comes to you and tells you, "Mom, I want your phone to access maybe a certain site," you also need to know what kind of a site that my child is going to access. You see, you are not going to let your child access that site because they have a right to information. No, the law does not allow that.
It's more on the principle.
On the principle.
And the principle, I mean, like you said, 4 principles that we need to really be aware of, and that is the best interest of a child. Non-discrimination, survival, and of course development as well, which is very, very key. Okay, but again, when it comes to, when you look at the laws, right, and of course, like we said, we have the Child Protection Act, and of course, we also have the Cyberbullying Act, right? How comprehensive you say that is when it comes to protecting our children? Because in as much as we have them, but again, when it comes to implementation, for example, like cases of prosecution, you know, and all those things, how would you say this covers our children, and especially our children rather, and especially here in the country, despite the fact that we have these laws that are meant to protect our children?
Yes, a very good question. Actually, Kenya is not a shortage of laws or the legal policy framework that protects these children. And first, it is the primary responsibility of the government to protect, I mean to promote, protect and uphold those rights, be it access to information, be it access to education, be it access to health. And so when we are talking about access to information, we can't afford not to talk about access to information using the digital space. The laws are there and the laws are very clear. Kenya has signed majority of the international conventions, the regional charters, and we have our national laws. I've talked about the National Plan of Action on OSHA, that is to combat online child sexual exploitation and abuse. That law is there. When you look at the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act 2018, very clear. So Kenya is not short of those laws. Again, we are also a member of the global campaign that is the We Protect, that also aims to combat the OSHA, that is online child sexual exploitation and abuse. But now the challenge comes to dissemination of these laws and policies. You find that me and you might be aware of those laws and provisions, but the people that are maybe at the interior most of the Kajiado, Isiolo, Garissa, Samburu, they may not be aware of these laws and policies. So maybe the starting point maybe is to have these laws and policies disseminated widely so that there is that awareness on what the law provides. Because again, as parents, we are not, when we are caught, because the age of criminal capability, when children are arrested, they are not arrested as criminals. They are arrested as children because, again, according to the UNCRC, the definition of a child is somebody, human being, any human being below the age of 18 years. So you see, when they are even arrested, they are arrested as minor offenders. And when they are sentenced, they are not convicted as criminal offenders. They are only committed to bolster rehabilitation for the purpose of rehabilitation. So it's about the government, but again, the collective responsibility to make sure that we create awareness around the laws, what the law provides when it comes to accessing the information. But the laws, the legal framework is there. We are not shortage of that. But again, there is also a campaign by the Communication Authority of Kenya that is also trying to sensitize the communities, the parents about the online child protection.
All right. So how about you take a break? But of course, when we come back, we'd also want to understand Girl Child Network, right? And like we said, you do not only focus on just the girls, but you also, you know, you really continue to promote education for girls, boys, and the youth as well. And of course, we'd also want to understand, so what are you doing, you know, as an organization to also promote, you know, the rights of the child, and especially in the digital environment, and even, you know, not all the digital space as well, because like we said, fundamental rights of these children does not only, you know, enclose them to the digital space as well. So we're taking that break, but of course we'll come back. We still have so much to talk about as far as the rights of the child in the digital environment in this very important day, and that is the Day of the African Child. So stay with us. We're coming back very shortly after the break. See you soon.
I experienced some abdominal pains and a very severe headache. The pain is too much such that you cannot even stand up, you cannot lie down.
The two most common causes are, one, use of alcohol, especially after a heavy binge, and the second most common cause is gallstones. So in some parts of the world, alcohol is more common, and in other parts of the world, gallstone disease is more common.
What was your first initial thoughts when the child says you have pancreatitis?
I was very much worried and a bit scared because I've never had it before.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
Angusha Kotroli kila wiki na Carrefour. Shika Renee Basmati rice at only $11.99. Rina oil 3 liters at $7.19. Frozen tilapia fillet at $6.99. Na potato loose at only 68 shillings. Angusha Kotroli na Carrefour.
Furahia maisha bora, linda jamii yako, linda biashara yako. Chukua bima leo. Tuna bima ya maisha, afya na ajali, mali hata elimu. Chukua bima leo. Linda jamii yako, linda biashara yako. Chukua bima leo. Tuna bima ya maisha, afya na ajali, mali hata elimu. Chukua bima leo.
No unga ti browse on flick ni mistering. No unga mnika na next week ni mistering.
Only on the trend. 10 p.m. The Trend in association. Techno Come on 20 series.
Taarifa Teke Teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story Bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your Taarifa Teke Teke.
All right, welcome back. Time is how much spent, and of course it's 40 minutes past the hour. And today, like we said, it's a very important day for all the African children. It is the Day of the African Child, which is usually marked every 16th day of June. All right, and of course, like we said when we started the conversation, the day honors the children who participated in the Soweto uprising on June 16th, 1976, and of course raises awareness as well on the continuing need for improvement of the education provided to African children. So this year's theme is on the rights of the child in the digital environment, and of course we're trying to understand. So then how do we ensure that, first of all, our children have access? We do not leave any child behind. We sort of try to understand the whole question about inequalities that are in existence, of the challenges that are facing all African children are facing, and especially when it comes to the digital environment. And how do we solve that? All right. And of course, to help us with our conversation today, we have Dennis Mutiso, who's the Deputy Director, Girl Child Network, here to, also shed some light as far as the importance, first of all, and the significance of this day, understanding the challenges, but at the same time, what are some of the solutions that are available so that we ensure that our children have the same sort of like level of awareness, first of all, when it comes to their rights as far as the digital space is concerned, but also access as well. But of course, 4 principles that Dennis mentioned, which is important for all of us to be aware of, and that is everything that we do should be at the best interest of the child, should be non-discriminatory, and of course for their survival and development as well. But Dennis, let's get a little bit personal, and this is in regards to the Girl Child Network, right? And like we said, you do not only promote education for girls alone, just because the name says Girl Child Network, but also the boys and the young people as well, and especially when it comes to the hard to reach and marginalized areas, right? So can you just tell us a little bit about, first of all, why this was such an important call to the Girl Child Network, and we'll talk about the lives that you have impacted so far and even promoting their rights as well on this very special day.
Thank you, Winnie. For the benefit of our viewers, I think it's important we also come back to history, so that we talk about maybe the origin of GCN, when it was started, and the reason why it was started.
Important, yes.
Girl Child Network was started in the year 1995 as a result of Beijing Platform for Action. During that event, there were those Kenyan representatives who went to Beijing to represent Kenya. And during that event, there were several articles that resulted from that conference. And one of the articles was Article 12 that dealt with the girl child. And because here in Kenya, we had no specific organization that was to run away with that rally call around the issues that affect the girl child in Africa. So from there, Girl Child Network was formed. But again, it also started as a project of Care Kenya. So it started as a project of Care Kenya. From there, of course, it was a small baby. It had to be supported by different development partners, Care, World Visions, Plan, the big international organization. But around 1997, the baby was a bit mature, so it became autonomous. So it broke away from Care Kenya. So it had its own independent board, its own program. And so currently we are running several programs across the country. Our head office in Parklands, but we have offices around the country, but of course at the county headquarters. Yeah, so currently we run several programs, but allow me also to say, when the organization was started, was primarily to address numerous challenges that affect the girl child. Issues like harmful cultural practices like FGM, early marriages, when perception around education for the girl child and all that, all those challenges. But again, you know, with time, there's no way in which you can address issues that affect girls when you are not addressing issues that affect the boy child. There's no way in which you can address issues that affect the girl child when you are not addressing issues that affect the community. Because when we talk about these negative social norms, where are they coming from? They are coming from the community. When we are talking about these negative perceptions around education for the girl child, where are they coming from? They are coming from the community. Again, you can't also talk about the issues affecting the girl child when you are not talking to the duty bearer, because the policies, the laws, the legislative framework also affect the. So currently, as we speak, the organization no longer focuses on the girl child alone. It has holistic programs that encompasses both the boy child, the youth, and the women. So currently we have several programs as per our strategic plan of 2022 up to 2027. But one of the biggest programs that we are currently running is on education, where we are targeting children from the hard to reach areas and also pockets of poverty areas in this country. When we talk about access to education, we find that there are some areas that are lagging behind. Actually, when we talk about gender parity, when you look at the national thing out the report, it may be misleading. It shows that we have closed the gaps when it comes to access to education for boys and girls. But you go to the interior most parts of the country, like Turkana, and you will find that maybe 20 girls will enroll at grade 1. Okay. But as they progress, as they climb the ladder, they will continue. Yeah, the number will continue to decrease. Why? Because of the challenges like FGM, early marriages, also perceptions around girls' education and all that, the stereotypes, the violence and what have you. So those are some of the things that we are trying to address in those areas. And how are we doing that? We are using several strategies. One of it is through awareness raising, through a concept that we call community conversation. Okay. A community conversation is a concept that believes that a community can identify issues that affect them and also come with their own homegrown solution with minimal external support to resolve those issues. So what are some of the issues that are discussed within that space? We discuss, the community discusses those social norms, those barriers to education, especially for girls. They also talk about poverty issues that affect them and what they can do to resolve that, so that they can increase their support to the girl child education. So the conversation revolves around those social norms and also perception around education. Then, because again, for you to create demand for education, you have to address those community barriers. Then at the school level, we also need to make the school disability and gender friendly. Because again, the reason why majority of the girls are not enrolling is because the school is not gender and disability friendly. So at school level, we also do infrastructure modifications. We also supply teaching and resource materials. We also build the capacity of the teachers on the instructions method, how to deliver the teaching content. Because again, if not careful, based on the kind of modes of instruction delivery, we may end up maybe disadvantaging maybe girls or boys with disability. Because remember, through our talks, it also depicts our stereotypes towards girls or boys. So we need to be gender sensitive as teachers. As we deliver that teaching, we need to put into considerations that we have girls, we have boys, we have those with disabilities, and also learners from diverse backgrounds. So we need to be sensitive to their need. So we build the capacity of the teachers to make sure that they deliver a teaching content that is appropriate to their learners. Then again, we also do a lot of water and sanitation infrastructure to make sure that that school is gender and disability seeking school. Then we also do a lot of advocacy, because remember I talked about the law and legislative framework that we have, but the biggest challenge is the implementation. For instance, we have the Basic Education Act of 2013, we have gender policy in education, we have the sector policy for trainees and learners with disability. So we do a lot of advocacy to make sure that the government implement these laws and policies, and it is also held to account on its failure to comply.
Because again, we do not want to see a lot of cases of very good policies, but implementation absolutely not happening. Okay, but then again, so when it comes to the digital space, and of course just linking what the Girl Child Network does, which is really, really good to schools, to the boys, to the girls, to the youth and women as well. But then again, so when it comes to the digital space, right, what exactly is the Girl Child Network doing? Just to make sure that, you know, in as much as you're promoting, you know, access to education and all those things, but also when it comes to the digital space and also upholding the rights of those children.
Yes, sorry, we need, before I talk maybe about what we are doing on access to internet for children, we also do not forget the child, because again, you can't talk with the communities to address the barriers. You can't unlock the barriers at the school level. You can't also unlock the barriers at policy level, and you also fail to unlock the barriers internal to the child. So we also do a lot of capacity building in terms of training them on their rights, so that they also demand those rights from their parents, and also petition the government to make sure that the government promotes, protects, and upholds those rights. We also build their capacity on life skills, and also give them the basic necessity to make sure that they are school ready. So when it comes to issues of digital access for, for children, we are doing a lot. But again, we are also faced with a lot of challenges because remember, we also operate in the hardest to reach areas where we do not have this infrastructure.
Okay.
So you find that, for instance, currently we are working with over 500 public primary schools, but you find that those schools are in those areas where we do not have the infrastructure that can support access to digital space. But we have several interventions, of course, to leverage on the effort of the government, because again, the government is also trying very much to address the digital divide that is there. So we are doing what we call the LAMP, or the resource center, where we are equipping those centers with the laptops, the desktops, to make sure, and also connect to make sure that, also making sure that the digital infrastructure is in place, so that the children can access the correct and also the age-appropriate information. We are also partnering with Google and also another organization called Mekoko, and we are doing a pilot program where we are training adolescents and also the youth on online marketing. And once they are through, the course takes approximate 48 contact hours. And once you are through, you are issued with a certificate on online marketing. And so from that online teaching, our youth are in a position to sell their wares online without the need maybe to get space where they can display their wares. They can do that online. Phase 2 of that, actually the program is called She's Digital, but it only focuses on women, up to the age of 35 years. But the phase 2 of that is what we call Be the Lead. It's also an online course where we are preparing our adolescent and youth on matters, online leadership, how they can do self-advocacy, so that they also hold the government to account when it comes to matters, access to information.
And you also take them through, you know, just online safety, right?
Yes,
because again, it is one thing to be, you know, to be first of all connected, but at the same time, it's also another thing to have, you know, the skills to make sure that you're able to navigate, but also stay safe on the internet.
Yes, just to let you know that we run one of the biggest resource center on matters online child protection. We have a lot of resource materials on that, and so before we do anything, before the children can access that digital infrastructure, first we have contact hours with the parents or the duty bearers, so that they know the time that the children should access, the protocols that should be followed, because you are not going to let the children access the computer lab anyhow. They need to be guided, and also we also need to block the sites that they not need to access.
Okay, make sure that they are safe at the same time. All right, and how much of an impact would you say this has been for, you know, all the children and even the women, you know, that you are impacting through, you know, the various projects that, you know, the Girl Child Network conducts? So how much of an impact would you say this has been?
I would say to a large extent, we have seen a change in the lives of our target beneficiaries. For instance, we have some project that target over 50,000 learners, and in some cases we've managed to attain that number and even surpass. And through that, we've seen children acquire the right skills, and now they can transit maybe to higher level of learning for those, because again we also have several pathways to education, because again you know, our academic is more of a vertical one, but we also have different pathways, because there are those children who cannot proceed from primary to secondary, of course, on basis of their performance. The government talks about 100% transition, but of course there are other factors that make the children not to transit to secondary. So we also have pathways that we support the children maybe to transit to TVET, maybe to transit for a crash program on maybe financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and what have you. And also those goes to others that proceed to maybe middle level colleges, others to universities. So we've been able to work with those children up to the time we exit and make sure that we connect them with opportunities. Because again, one of the biggest challenges that we have as a country, yes, our education system is good, but again, what happens once after that? Do we connect our trainees or learners with the opportunities that exist in the market? So you find that there is a gap. So we work with our learners and training up to the point that they exist, and to make sure that they are stable.
I like that. All right. So then, understanding those challenges, and especially challenges that the African child faces now in this time and age, where of course we are living in the digital space, a lot of them have actually been born into the same, and that is, you know, the internet, a very connected world. But others will continue to be born in this digital space, and especially when it comes to advancements in technology. So the big question then remains, how best can we advance this, you know, children's rights when it comes to this digital space, you know, so that we close these loopholes, we ensure that our children have access, number one, but at the same time they are very well protected, understanding their rights even as they navigate the digital space.
We need to start today.
Okay.
We can't wait.
We can't wait for tomorrow.
We can't wait for tomorrow.
Okay.
Because if we wait for tomorrow, we are going to lose the generation of tomorrow.
That's
so we
true.
need to start preparing our children, the current generation.
Yes.
Because the child that will be born today needs to find also a child who can, or maybe a system or a community that can guide him or her appropriately on how to access the internet spaces or how to live within the digital space. Because again, we also need to humanize our digital space. When you remember, I don't know whether, or maybe the last time you used a matatu, but today if you hop in a matatu, you will be surprised. Everybody, the person seated next to you is not the person, but your mobile phone. And what are you doing? You are online. But you know, then before, people used to, as they travel maybe from here to Mombasa, to talk, to socialize, to interact, to get to know each other, to converse. But now we are conversing with our
phones.
You know, that is what we call the alternative constructed world. But we need to come to the ideal world. We humanize our digital space. So we need to prepare the environment today so that the child that is born today find that we have the right environment, we have the right legislative framework, we have the parents that are aware, they also have the peers that are aware about both the opportunities that are provided by the digital space, and also the risk that are posed by the era of digital space. So we need to start today. We can't afford to wait for tomorrow.
I like that. I like that. So allow us to end the show on that note. Yes, very high note. That is, we cannot afford to wait. Yes. Thank you so much, Dennis Mutiso, Deputy Director, Girl Child Network, for coming by today to just help us understand how best we can protect and uphold, you know, the rights of our children, especially when it comes to the digital space, even as we celebrate this day, and that is the Day of the African Child. So thank you very much, and thank you for staying with us until the end of the conversation. I know you have picked a lot from the show, and of course, allow us to say goodbye. My name is Winnie Lubembe. Enjoy the rest of your viewing and your weekend as well, but do not go too far, because the Morning Fix continues after this short break, and enjoy the show as well. Stay safe. Goodbye.